It says live on YouTube. Are we good?
We're good to go. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. For the benefit of our audience, we have already done the Pledge of Allegiance and called the meeting to order. Next item on the agenda is the roll call.
Okay. Mayor Lofgren.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ott, out. Trustee Doherty.
Here.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Here.
Trustee Morris.
Here.
Trustee Strock.
Present.
Trustee Westcott.
Here.
Thank you.
And Trustee Ott is excused for his absence. He had a friend that had a serious injury he had to go attend to. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
I move to approve the agenda. I would like to ask that we remove action item A, which will be delayed to August 4th, and add discussion item C, future remote meetings discussion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Trustee Jeffrey and a second from Trustee Morris. Roll call, please.
Yes. Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Trustee Ott. Oh, sorry. I'll take him off. Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey. Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion carries 6-0. The agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is audience business. It looks like we do have 2 attendees today. One of them appears to be from the janitorial service. The other is Jill Sanchez, whose name I do not recognize, so we should probably check in with that person.
Okay, I'm not sure who that is either, so let me ask. Jill Sanchez, are you here to participate in audience participation, or are you part of the meeting? Or they're both, so I just got a text that they're both with the cleaning crew.
Yeah. Perfect. So no audience business tonight. You didn't receive any emails or anything like that, did you, Linda?
We do not have any emails. I have not received anything prior to. Crystal just texted again. Perfect.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. For the benefit of the audience, tonight's consent agenda includes the July 21st, 2020 payment approval report in the amount of $227,416.09 and the July 7th, 2020 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Trustee Doherty and a second from Trustee Jeffrey. Roll call, please.
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Trustee Strock.
Yes.
Trustee Morris. Do we lose Trustee Morris?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Lofgren.
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Trustee Doherty.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is the financial update. Ms. Rademacher.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So we've made it halfway through the year. 2020 is halfway over, according to the financials, at least. You do have the June financial statements in front of you, and I've also done a summary agenda item as I have, for first quarter. I've updated it for second quarter. So I'll just quickly go through that, and then if you all have any questions, then we can talk about those things at that point in time. As far as revenues go, sales tax still seems to be coming in quite a bit higher than 2019, but I do, it doesn't seem to be trending lower on any month, so that's a very good sign. Our businesses have not appeared to be affected too much by the pandemic, and actually our remote or our online sales have jumped already up to 19% in May, so that was a high, the highest that I've seen our remote sales reach at this point in time. Motor vehicle sales, they are the weak spot right now. I do expect, I did hear a report that I think June had a large uptick in motor vehicle sales in general, and we did see an increase from the dip that happened in May. May was really low. It went down about 62% versus May of 2019. So I do expect that to maybe creep back up. It is 34% of our total sales tax. So it is a thing to keep an eye on and to watch, but I do anticipate that one will continue to go up if the economy improves, if people get back to jobs, and we know interest rates are going to remain low. So that's about the only bright shining thing there. Property tax, we're doing fine. We've collected about 97% of the property tax at this point. In 2019, we had collected about 99%. So we don't have, this seems to be a pretty typical year so far for property tax. Usually you do have most of them collected by the end of June. So we're doing well there. And the county did come out and say originally they were not going to have a preliminary certification evaluation for us for 2021 until October 13th, but they did come out and say that they are going to still prepare a preliminary certification and have it to us by or on August 25th as normal. So we'll keep you guys posted on that one. As far as building goes, we haven't seen any activity on the building side. We're standing at the one permit that was issued. I believe it was for 7-Eleven in January. We do have 12 single-family dwellings forecast for 2020. So hopefully that will happen later this year. So I am building that into the 2020 forecast at this point in time. We have received a portion of the state's severance tax for the oil and gas distributions, and I understand we're going to get another smaller distribution that is going to be from June until August. So we've already gotten around $88,000. I don't anticipate much, maybe 10,000 or so, because it's only going to be for a short period of time on that one. Going off to the expenses, we're holding expenses pretty much in check, as we said we would. We haven't filled a lot of some positions that are open right now. We're trying to cut costs. We're holding back on some capital projects. So we are being cognizant on the spending side still of the equation to make sure that we continue to do well through the second half of the year. Conservation Trust Fund. I do anticipate that fund to be at about $200,000 by the end of the year, which I think some of that money was maybe going to be tagged or earmarked to do the trail project. So that may be something you want to consider moving forward with, or having another discussion about moving down that path. On the water fund, we did have the 2 months where we waived the base rate. So those were in April and May, I believe. And it was pretty close to what our forecast was. It was around $90,000 each month, waiving that base rate, along with the shutoffs and the delinquent charges. So it did, total lost revenue for that time period was about $181,000. On the flip side of that, water usage has been going very high, and so we're seeing a lot of increase in water sales, which I'm sure Mr. Ramey will talk about when his turn comes around. But so even with the base rate being waived, in my crystal ball, I'm seeing that the usage is going to be higher than what was in 2019, and hopefully make up some of that gap for us. So that's good news. Going on to, I think that's about it. Wastewater, not a lot going on there. Again, all of these funds are being affected by the lack of development. So we got to keep that in mind as we go forward. Does anybody have any questions at that point regarding the financials? And then I'll talk a little bit briefly about the other items that I have listed in the AIS.
Okay, I'm checking for virtual hands. And I see no hands, so it appears you can move on.
So under my other items, I did want to just brief you on, keep you posted on the, we passed the investment policy back in May, and then we had the three gentlemen come and speak to you all regarding the investment pools. I did set up accounts with CSAFE and CSIP. We already had an account with Colo Trust. So the accounts were established in June, and we did transfer about 10 million out of Chase, where it was earning 0.18% in interest, into the CSIP and CSIP accounts, CSAFE accounts, which were earning around 0.5. So quite a difference in interest earnings, in addition to being safe and to being liquid. So I think we'll see a huge uptick in our interest income in the coming months. So I'll keep you posted on that one. Bond right refinancing as part of the audit. I think a question was put out there whether or not we could refinance any of our current bonds. And so you do see I did contact the gentleman who had helped the town, Mr. Alan
Matloss.
Yes. Yes. And he gave me the little synopsis that I included in the board packet about our options that we have with the three bonds that we currently have, the 2012 bonds, the 2012 water bonds, and then the 2018 GO bonds. So you have a little abbreviated page there about what we can do. I'm not thinking there would be a lot that could happen with the 2012 the GO bonds that have the maturity in 2020. It may cost us more than it's worth, definitely not to refinance, but we could prepay them with no penalties and pay them off earlier. The 2018 bonds, we really can't do anything with them until 2026. So those we're kind of stuck with. But we could look at the water revenue bonds, and he did mention that you all had talked about refinancing those in conjunction with some other water projects. So maybe that's something we can talk about as we dive deeper into the budget for 2021. I did also include in the packet a spreadsheet that I've created to track the coronavirus expenditures, so that we can start accessing some funds from the Weld County pool of money that they have allocated to the town of Lochbuie. So we are tracking those. We are trying to come up with some other expenditures and ideas of how to best use that money to help the citizens of Lochbuie and the businesses in Lochbuie. So I just put that in there as a draft of what we're building off of right now. The other thing, we are, like I said, we are trying to do some cost savings measures, being very cognizant of things that we can control and we can hopefully reduce the costs. One of the big ones we identified was our workers' compensation. And so we did switch from CIRSA over to Pinnacle Assurance at the beginning of July. So we'll have a 6-month until the renewal comes again in January. And then we'll be on a calendar year plan with Pinnacle going forward. And we should save somewhere around $14,000 a year based on the current payroll and the current rates. So that was a substantial savings over what CIRSA was offering to us. So we made that change. And then the next thing is the Weld County program. Steve and I will be sitting down and hopefully working closely with Dawn Sandoval to see if there's any projects that would be eligible for this program. I will be honest, I don't know much about it, so have to get up to speed and learn a little more about that program, but that is available to us. And then just small little housekeeping things. We're trying to get some of our health insurance and our benefit renewals on a calendar year renewal basis, just to make it easier for budgeting and things like that. So just continuing to work on getting some things for less money and trying to save money where we can and think of ways to improve any processes that are out there. So if you have any questions at this point, I can answer them.
I know I have a couple, but I'll look for other hands first. Not seeing any other hands. First thing I want to say is thank you for this packet. It was super helpful, and I really liked how all the information was set out. Made it really easy to understand everything that's going on. The two questions I had are, do we know what the balance is on those 2012 GO bonds and what it would cost us to pay them off?
I don't know that off the top of my head right now. And you're talking about the 2012 general obligation bonds that mature in 2020.
Right.
I'll reach out to Alan and find out all the details on that. But I do understand that we could prepay it with no penalties. And if it's due and final maturity is in 2022, I would assume that it's not much of a balance remaining. So I can check on all of that.
Okay. And then the second question I had is, it looks like our COVID or CARES or whatever fund, we've only spent about 18. Do we know if we're going to get anywhere near the number that Well gave us?
Well, that's why we're all kind of hoping that we can put our heads together and figure out how to use this money and keep it in lock buoy and make it helpful for our citizens. I mean, we've had a lot of good ideas. We have reached out to our IT department. One of the ideas that staff had was to, if we have to do more remote working, if that's what it comes to again, we do want employees to, not have to be using their personal computers and their personal monitors and their personal printers, and trying to set up some remote offices for staff that can work remotely. We are pursuing the hot spots and things like that if we're able to do that and help out the school. We've, reached out to the principal of the superintendent of the schools and asked if there's any way that we can assist them, whether that be with their food service or any other ways. Do all the kids have the technology they need? So we are reaching out to other nonprofits and trying to come up with ways to keep this money locally in lock buoy. And I am working on a grant program. I'm modeling it after, actually, I found one that the town of Johnstown has prepared. It looks very similar to the one I had created in Meade, but it was more for nonprofits when I was at Meade. But it would be used to give some grants to our local businesses using some of this money. So I'll have that program put together for the next board meeting, and some a policy and procedures in place if that's something that the town and that you all want to pursue as far as getting grants to some of the local businesses. So staff has continued to try to think of ways, and we need everybody to be sharpening your pencils and coming up with some creative ideas in order to spend that money.
Perfect. That makes sense. And kind of related to that, I know we had previously talked about board member tablets. Did we ever decide to move forward with that, or what's the status of that?
Yeah, we did get a quote from our IT department from Timberland on getting iPads for the board. And so I do have that quote. We just received the quote, I believe, on Monday. So we haven't had a chance to go through the whole thing, but that was part of the quote.
Perfect. That all sounds great. Any questions from anyone else? I'm checking for virtual hands again. Maureen has her hand up. Go ahead, Maureen.
Thank you, Mary. I noticed Trustee Strock has his hand up too, so I'm
Yes.
willing to defer. Okay. If Larry, if it's okay with you. Denise, I just had a question about those 2012 water bonds. Something to consider, maybe even if we don't do another water project. Do you know what the current interest rate is? And if Alan gave you any clue what the current interest rate on the bonds are, and then what potential interest rate we could get? And it may make sense.
Right. I'm trying to, I can see the audit in my head because I read it so much, and I know it was listed in the audit as far as those rates on those bonds. I want to say it was somewhere between, like a floating rate between 3% and 4%. So that is a question I can reach out and ask him also of what type of, if we did refinance, what kind of rate we'd be looking at.
So he's pretty good. He'll do a little spreadsheet analysis for you. He's done that for the town before and for other clients that I work with, where show us the interest rate, what the payments are, and whether then it makes sense. And I think that that would be really helpful information to get.
I'll reach out to him and get some
Thanks.
more information.
Okay, Trustee Schrock?
I had a question about Don Sandoval's CDEG program, and I guess I was going to ask if we had any examples, but if they only have $1 million budget for all these different cities, is there really much money in that grant program?
I mean, maybe Steve, you can talk more about that one. I am not that familiar with this program, but even if we could get 50,000, or if we can identify a project, I don't even know if we have any projects that are eligible. So that's the first starting point. But if we do have some projects that are eligible, if we can get anything, anything is better than nothing. But I think we need to have a meeting with Dawn and really sit down and zoom in on what is eligible, what do we have that is eligible that we're looking at doing, and then taking it from there.
Correct, yeah.
Thank
We
you.
just need to set up that with Dawn, and I don't know how they plan to distribute, or if they're going to try and hit every community or just certain projects.
Certainly.
We'll try and determine that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and I'll do one more check for hands. And seeing none, thank you very much for your update.
You're welcome.
Okay, next item on the agenda is action item 8A is delayed to August 4th because Castle Rock just got a new attorney that wanted a chance to review it before we discuss it. Next item is action item 8B, resolution 2020-10. Mr. Stamey or Ms. Rademacher?
So this is a resolution to appoint Denise Rademacher and me as finance officer to prepare the budget for 2021.
Okay, questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Jacob, before you do that, can I just say one thing?
Yep. Go ahead.
Just for clarification, the resolution that is in your packet had a clerical assistance was capitalized and it shouldn't have been for finance director. And then to make it consistent with the rest of our resolutions, under the portion where it has now therefore be it resolved, I included Weld County in there, but our other ones don't have that in there. So I took that out. But those are the only changes I made from the one you had in your packet. So just wanted to clarify that.
Perfect, thank you. Any questions in light of that? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-10, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lochbuie, Colorado, designating the town administrator with the assistance of the finance director to prepare the 2021 municipal budget.
Second.
I have a motion from Trustee Jeffrey and a second from Trustee Doherty. Roll call, please.
Trustee Strock,
Yes.
Trustee Doherty,
Yes.
Trustee Morris.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren,
Yes,
Trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Thank you.
motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is action item 8C, ordinance 2020-659. This is concerning the storage unit moratorium. Mr. On.
Thank you, Mayor. So in January of this year, we adopted ordinance 2020-654, which imposed a moratorium on the processing of land use applications for storage related uses while we looked at regulations that we might want to adopt going forward. That moratorium is set to expire this evening at midnight, and we're not prepared yet with those regulations. Part of the reason for that was just the intervening COVID and all the work that sort of took us aside during that period. And so this ordinance just extends the resolution and gives us until October 20th of this year to get those regulations in place. Our goal is to get them in place much quicker than that, but that's a reasonable time frame in which we can get something drafted and have meetings with the board and move forward on adoption.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Seeing no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 2020-659, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Lock Bowie, Colorado, extending an existing moratorium on the acceptance or processing of any form of application or approval, including building permits, which would authorize an indoor storage, outdoor storage, screened, outdoor storage, unscreened, personal storage units, which would be mini storages, and or supply yards, use and declaring an emergency.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from Trustee Strock and a second from Trustee Morris. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lofgren,
Yes.
Trustee Strock,
Aye.
Trustee Doherty,
Yes.
Trustee Morris,
Yes.
Trustee Jeffrey,
Yes.
Trustee Westcott.
Yes.
Thank you.
And the motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is action item 8D, the janitorial contract. Mr. Johns.
Yeah, so I worked with Denise and we prepared and went out to bid for janitorial services to kind of meet more in line with what we felt like the needs of town hall were. And I've also invited Paul and Gil, who are with Jana King as well here, but we only received one bid. The current company, Sunshine Building Maintenance, that we used did not actually bid on the RFP. So everything's kind of in front of you as far as what the reduction in cost would be. And just looking to have, I'm going to turn this over to Gil and Paul. I'm not sure which one will want to speak, but let them kind of speak on behalf of their company.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Trustees, and we're thank you to be invited us to join you this evening. And we're here to answer any questions that you have in regards to our proposal that we presented to the town of Lock Bowie.
Okay, I will check for virtual hands. Anyone have any questions? I'm seeing, oh, there we go. Trustee Strock?
Did you say Lock Beauty or Lock Bowie?
Lock Bowie, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. An?
Sorry, just wanting to be sure that we've looked at our current agreement and that we understand our termination provisions. And did you get to do that, Mark, with the current contract that we have?
Yes. Yep. If the board approves this moving forward, it's just, we would need to issue a 30-day letter of notice in order to cancel the other services, and then we'd move over.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for our potential new provider? Trustee Jeffrey?
Not for the provider. I just wondered, there's not going to be any additional charge that goes along with that 30-day provision, Mark?
No.
Thank you.
I made it a point to reach out to the current cleaning company when this all started and let them know personally that we were doing this, and gave them ample opportunity to bid on this. So they potentially are aware of this, obviously.
Okay, any other questions? I had a quick question. So you indicated it, you were looking at what our services needed to look like. So are we reducing services, or I guess I was concerned as to, I shouldn't say concerned, I was surprised that we were able to almost halve the cost of our services. So what's the big difference that is dropping them so substantially?
So the current cleaning company does 5 days a week. We would actually go to 2 days a week. We felt in our staff discussion, we felt that really the day-to-day cleaning, we can kind of do as a staff. So if a company comes in overnight, obviously throughout the day, we need to maintain our own areas throughout the day. We don't have a cleaning company to do that. So we felt like it's kind of the staff's responsibility to kind of help maintain that. And we've been doing an excellent job with that. So we didn't necessarily feel that the 5 days a week was necessarily warranted.
Okay, that normally would make sense to me. I guess, is there any concerns given that we kind of want things to be extra clean right now about choosing right now as a time to clean less often.
We're making it a point that the staff just throughout the day needs to be cleaning throughout the day. So it's really falls on us because we're the ones that are coming in and out of the doors and touching stuff that we need to make sure that we maintain our own areas. The cleaning service does a great job overnight, but as soon as one person walks in the building, you now have contamination. The cleaning needs to be done throughout the day to really make sure that it's maintained properly.
Right. That makes sense. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Anyone?
I'll move to approve. Trying to think about what the wording should be here. Approve the janitorial services contract between the town of Loch Bowie and Jana King.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion from trustee Jeffrey and a second from trustee Doherty. Roll call, please.
Trustee Westcott,
Yes.
trustee Doherty,
Yes.
trustee Morris,
Yes.
trustee Strong,
Yes.
Mayor Lofgren,
Yes,
trustee Jeffrey.
Yes.
Thank you.
and the motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is action item 8E, the update on the County Road 2 and roundabout project. Mr. Eddie, if he's on, or Steve, I'm not sure.
So I expected John Eddy was to attend tonight. I just sent him an email to ask his status, and I see he's not in, but
Sorry, I'll interrupt. He sent us an email earlier, Steve, that he had some prior arrangement or
Okay.
something, was unable to attend tonight and asked if maybe
Okay.
you or Mark could
okay.
check this out.
So you do have his summary report in your packet, and our forecast for the project cost is has exceeded our current budget by about $115,000. A large part of that was dealing with the subsurface, kind of the wet areas and soft spots. And when we had to repair those, we had to do it in accordance with the CDOT specs in terms of the material that had to be used. So that drove some of that cost. And the second item that was larger cost was the conduit to extend to the light and electric in the roundabout from where that had to originate. And based on the plan set did not have an actual length of the conduit, but just had a scaled, so you'd have to go back to the plans and put a scale on the map and figure out what that length was. So I think there was not an accurate determination of what the length of that conduit was based on the plan set. So that drove the cost of that, which was several hundred feet length more than what the plan set showed. So just the connection point wasn't accurately determined. There was some additional cost in doing the traffic control, again, during the kind of the base course repair. It took a little bit longer for that section of work. The project is still on schedule for a September 4th completion date at this time. Mark had mentioned the upcoming, or the closure of the intersection closure, and he can probably indicate how that's working out so far. So Mark, do you have other comments to add at the point?
No, I think you hit the big bullet points as far as what we discussed with being over budget. I think as far as the roundabout progress is moving very well. Obviously, it's a large endeavor, and there's going to be maybe some frustrations from our residents. This intersection probably being one of them, where we have to close down the intersection. It's really the safest and the best option, and it is moving extremely fast, which helps, hopefully get that traffic closure moved along faster. So things are moving really, really good. I think the work's being done really well. If anyone's had a chance to go through it, you can see that 3/4 of it is basically done with the sign and the stone there. And so I think it's coming along. It's looking great. We're getting, the lights in. So they're working hard, and I know the engineer and myself were out on a daily basis, just trying to keep things moving as fast as possible and keep it as safe as possible. That's the important thing in that intersection.
Cool. Questions or comments from the board? Mr. Ann?
Full of questions today. Sorry about that. Steve, just wondering about that deficit, if there is a contingency for that, or if that, when you say project budget and project cost, that's not contract cost that had a contingency written into it, huh?
No, we did have a contingency, if I remember right, of about 90,000 in that budget. So we will exceed, I think, the total amount of the project, including that, I think the contingency by about 115, if I remember right.
Jeez.
So it'll just be general fund monies then, or?
Yes, it'll be, yes.
Okay.
So between the widening and the roundabout project, we've exceeded the 4.5 or whatever we got, plus the money from rounding companies or whoever.
So there's a summary of the project. I think it was in the financial report this time as well.
I know I've seen it before. I don't know that I saw it this time, but
Maybe it wasn't tonight. We can give you an update on the status of the overall project and the contributions we received from Lockbuoy Center.
Yeah, I think I would appreciate that, because I know, I mean, obviously one part of this project was going to include our negotiations with Walton in terms of adding the things that weren't part of the scope of their project. And if we're out of money already, that's concerning. Any other questions or concerns from the board? Seeing none, I will move on to our next item. There was no action that we needed to actually take on that tonight, was there?
Correct.
Okay. Next item is action item 8F, the roundabout sign. Mr. Staney or Mr. Johns?
I will have Mark just review the status of looking at the sign options on the stone that would be engraved or etched into the stone.
Yeah, so I'd sent out, it's in the board packet. There's 3 different options as far as the engraving. Obviously, there's the current town logo with the mountain and the design. And as you look at the different options, you kind of eliminate some of that design. And what that does is the less design is the bigger the letters, which I believe Linda had sent that out for everyone to give you an idea. Is if we kind of eliminate maybe that mountain, it increases the lettering. So it's a little more visible. So I don't know, like I said, if you've all been around and seen that stone, there's a limited amount of space as far as being able to engrave on that. So we're looking at seeing what options the board would like. And maybe if you've seen other towns and what they have and how they have it displayed. Normally my recommendation is the bigger the lettering is kind of nice. So you really want people to see Lockbuoy and not necessarily maybe a mountain peak on the stone. So that's kind of was my thought. And I also put in, and we did a department head survey, and I put that in the notes as well, kind of what we kind of thought would be a good fit for the town as well.
Okay. And I think I will just kind of walk down the board, since everyone probably will have something to say on this one, or at least should register their vote. So I will start from my far left, which would be, man, we haven't been in the boardroom in so long. Trustee Westcott.
Always starting with me on hard.
I know.
I don't know that I have a preference. I think that Mark, your point about having larger letters and making it more readable is a good one. I think that the little graphics with the swirls above and below the letter add a little bit of personality to it. So I think I would probably just go along with what the department had said, and the second one looks good to me.
Okay. Trustee Morris.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to throw a good solid vote in for the third option without the lines above or below. I think that one, the lettering is proportional properly to the size and shape of the stone. The one with the mountain looks cool, but there's way too much negative space on either side of it. And then the lettering's too small. The second one looks cool with the line above and below, but I think that's getting too busy with too many horizontal lines. If you look at it from a distance, you've got the horizontal line at the top of the stone, the top line, the third line is the town of, fourth line is the name, fifth line is the line underneath it, and then you got all the horizontal lines of the masonry below it. That, to me, and I'm no designer, but to me that seems a little bit too busy with an oversaturation of horizontal lines. The third one is my favorite. Like I said, I feel like it fits the shape of that stone perfectly. There's the right amount of margin around the top, bottom, and the sides. It looks clean, elegant, big enough that the town's name really popped. So, like I said, my vote's for that third one. That one,
Okay.
I think pops.
Okay, Trustee Strack.
Well, over the years, I've learned one thing, that motifs come and go. And for that reason, I would pick number 3. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Hot is gone. Trustee Doherty.
I like number 2.
Okay, short and to the point. Trustee Jeffrey.
You know, I'm thinking about 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, when we're not a town anymore. I don't think it should say town of, first and foremost. Like, we're going to be a city, like it's going to happen. I think we all know that. And I don't want to spend all this money now and then have to replace it down the road. So I would like to see something like small and scripty from the left, welcome to, and then Loch Buoy as big and bold as it can be. Keep it simple. Don't call it a town. Don't call it a city. Make it something that can sit there for 50 years.
Okay, and actually, Trustee Jeffrey just convinced me that I think that's actually a good idea. I like number 3 for all the reasons Trustee Morris pointed out, that it's large, it fits the block, and I like, instead of doing town of, the welcome to or whatever, something like that, that Trustee Jeffrey just suggested, to make sure it can stand the test of time a little bit better. Is there anyone else that has any follow-up comments or thoughts? I'm checking for virtual hands. Is there anyone, Trustee Strack?
What if we just went just a plain and simple Loch Buoy?
Is there anyone that's opposed to that? Essentially number 3, but just Loch Buoy.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep, go ahead.
I guess I'd be opposed to just the town's name on there. I think either something identifying it or the welcome thing is a great idea. Of all the town monuments I've seen, I think most of them are welcome to such and such. I think that would be appropriate, and that makes a lot of sense.
I'm seeing a lot of staff heads nod at that too. So is there anyone who's opposed to that idea, the welcome to? I'm not seeing any hands, so I think staff might have its direction. Looks like we're looking at a variation of number 3 that says welcome to rather than town of.
Can I ask one question, Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
So do we want the welcome to like angled and kind of maybe a little bit more different, or just a straight horizontal welcome to and then Loch Buoy big to the right of it?
Kind of what I pictured, and I think Jamie was the one that pointed out, so I'll let her follow up. But what I had pictured is essentially exactly like number 3, but just replace town of with welcome to and some kind of different font to make it stand out.
Okay.
Is that what you were thinking of, Jamie?
Yeah, and I think if we're going to use a different font, it might make sense to left justify the welcome to, and then to center the Loch Buoy and not have those lines etched. I really liked Trustee Morris's point about all the horizontal lines in the masonry down below. I don't think we need that line.
I agree with that. Trustee Strack, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'd just like to see a picture of what we come up with.
Yeah. How quickly do we have to decide this?
The sooner the better, but maybe if you want, I could type something on a Word document and we could send it out. Or if Mrs. Jeffrey wants to type something up real quick and just send it out, if everyone blesses it, then I can get it over to the engraver and we can move forward.
Yeah.
That's
And
what I was going to suggest. If you guys could just, if someone on staff could come up with a kind of template and fire it off to the board tomorrow, or someone, and then send it to, if Jamie, if you do it, send it to Linda so she can get it out to us, and then just make sure no one is horribly opposed to it. And if not, then we can move forward. Does that work for everyone? Trustee Westcott?
I just want to make sure. So who actually designed these original options? Did it come from a designer, or was this just something we did on our own?
Those options are all pulled from our comp plan. It's the town logo.
So the sign etcher did those graphics. I think we could ask them to give us a new graphic showing welcome to, and we could send that out.
I just think that's a better idea in terms of asking the people who are going to do it to give us an idea rather than us sending something that they can't duplicate or that they know is not going to work right.
Right. I would just ask them to give us a updated sign graphic.
Right.
Perfect.
So that works. So once we get something from them that's updated, just send it to the board. And as long as you don't get any absolutely not, then I say we move forward.
I think I understand what everyone's wanting.
Perfect. Thank you. And of course, that would end up being like the longest discussion tonight. Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion item 9A, the town hall facility discussion regarding the 410 schedule. Is this you, Linda, or is this?
I can do a brief
Okay,
intro. Thank you, Mayor. So you do have in your packet a detailed memorandum describing a proposal for that staff would like to implement, that we would like to request implementation of a 4-day, 10-hour work week schedule. That would be from Monday to Thursday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it has several purposes. One is to address the ongoing COVID concerns and the social distancing provisions recommended for that. But also extend the customer service hours both at the start and the end of the workday, business day. It would provide a flexible work schedule, which is an important kind of a work-life benefit for employees. It's also an attractive mechanism to retain and to recruit employees. Court would still operate as it currently does on the one Friday per month. And public safety, the police department would operate as they currently do as well. Public Works would start on this 410 schedule, but obviously that would adjust as we get into the snow season and for different kinds of events, you know, like weather events. So we have had internal discussions of how to implement this and work with this among staff. And I think we can provide the customer service. We've had experience with some of the closures during the COVID first phase in March, April, part of May. So we've worked with that to provide services both remotely and in different fashions to our customers. And the memorandum has more detail. So if you have questions, I think either Linda or Denise can also jump in to help answer some of those.
Okay. And before I turn to the board, I just want to let everyone know that Trustee Ott and I had already discussed this with staff a little bit. And two of the big changes you see in this document from our initial conversations are initially staff was suggesting 7 to 5:30 p.m. Both Trustee Ott and I expressed concerns that it should be 6 to ensure that we gain that hour in the morning and in the evening to allow for customer access and residents to have a chance to come to town hall during those extra hours. And then the second was to ensure that courts was discussed in here. So I will look for comments and questions from the board. Trustee Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that they had discussed the childcare issue and that it might not be a concern and that perhaps currently employees don't live in our school district, but Brighton has no school on Mondays. The current education plan in light of the pandemic for RE3J is kids being remote learning at home on Mondays. I just think that it might be prudent for us to give this a trial, sort of matching what we see for kids in surrounding areas, which would then be a work week of Tuesday through Friday. I don't know if that was discussed. I just wanted to throw it out as something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any response from staff to that particular suggestion?
I just have one comment. We discussed that briefly, not to the extent of the school situation, but the childcare thing. The only thing I'll say is that Fridays are our slowest day, and that's why we picked the Friday. Monday are our busiest day per se. So that's just some background how we got to that Monday through Thursday.
Okay. Trustee Westcott?
You may have just answered this, but looking through this and looking through the reasons to do it, I agree 100% that given the pandemic that limiting exposure in the building is a good idea. I think what I was wondering, and I don't mean to throw a wrench in anybody's plans, but what if you did something where you worked 2 days, then took Wednesday off and then worked 2 days? And as I was thinking through this, my thought was, if I'm a resident and I need to do something at town hall, I'm more likely to take Monday or Friday off and then come in and do that, just so I have that longer weekend. And so if one of those days is closed, like you said, but if you're saying that Friday is the slowest day of the week, as opposed to Wednesday, maybe that's a non-issue. However, I do think that, especially if we're cutting back to 2 days with the janitorial contract, having that day between the 2 days that you worked for cleaning to take place actually makes maybe some sense in terms of making sure that the building is sanitized before you come back in for those next 2 days. Just a thought. I know that really ruins everybody's weekends because now you're taking a day off in the middle of the week. But.
Any response from staff to that particular suggestion? Nope. Okay. Trustee Stratt?
I was fortunate enough to talk to a few of the staff members who really think that 410 is a good idea. I think it probably is. I really had 2 questions. One is, I would assume that on nights that we have our meetings and stuff, that Linda and Crystal and anybody that's participating, and Steve also, that they would adjust their hours so that they weren't there from 7 to 9 o'clock at night. I'm sure they probably will, but I would hate to see them in that building for that long in one day. My second question was, I had a few concerns about Public Works not being around all week and just being on call. I'm assuming they would be on call on Friday.
Correct.
And I guess Mr. Johns could address whether he thinks one person would be enough on Fridays to handle most of the situations or not.
So I actually reached out to a couple other public works departments, including one of the counties. It's similar to what we would do just on the weekend. Friday would just be an extra kind of weekend day. You'd be on call. We get very limited calls on the weekends. They're actually more prevalent in the afternoons. And I actually think the extended hours where Public Works is around and working similar hours or the same hours as Town Hall, we're more of a support for Town Hall and can kind of actually take care of things. As you know, if we were to do a shut off, those are very common where we get called back out at 5:30 at night to turn the water back on. We are actually there and on the clock and able to accommodate our residents because of the extended hours. I actually think we would lessen the amount of call outs during the weekday and actually have the same number of calls on the weekend. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Checking for any more virtual hands. And I guess I will look for anyone. I just want to make sure before we kind of give staff. Oh, Trustee Doherty.
I'm surprised Trustee Struck didn't mention this, but them having Fridays off would make it much more likely that we get the board packet on Thursdays.
I did talk to him about that.
Okay. Is there anyone, before we give staff direction to put this on the agenda as action next meeting, is there anyone who is opposed to this as it currently sits as a general matter or to a particular part of it? I'm looking for hands. And I'm seeing none, so I think staff, you have direction to bring this back for action at our August 4th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discussion item 9B. This is gas station setbacks, and I think this was Trustee Strack.
Oh, boy, here we go. Well, I think the way we set up the ordinance a couple of weeks ago basically said that there would be a sound wall and probably about 25 feet to a canopy to a fueling station. So if you were living in Lockwood, you would just have a wall between you and a fueling station. Once again, this to me is similar to our oil and gas operations. And I'm going to ask the same question. How close would you really like to live to a gas station? I mean, there are lighting impacts, there are noise impacts, and also an awful lot of health impacts that go along with it. I had some pictures printed up, and I don't know if we can bring them up so we could scroll through them or not. But basically, if you look at our new 7-Eleven, see what happens here. Thank you, Linda. This is our new 7-Eleven, and you can see these pipes out in front of the building right on the side of the road. If you look at those, there's probably 2 of them take air in or on each thing. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them take air in and 4 of them exhaust air. So maybe you don't see it, but there are fumes and a plume of carcinogens that are just coming out of this all the time. If you also look at this, you'll figure out that there are 24 places to fill up there, which means can be spills, there can be all kinds of pollution and stuff. If we go to this particular 7-Eleven, if you go across the street, it's close to 300 feet from a house in Lockwood. The GSI says it's a little bit more. Can we go to the next picture? Yeah, keep going, please. Okay, this picture is at Bridge and 50th by the King Soopers. And if you look at the vent pipes, right behind them is a roof to a building. And this is a child care center. And if you step this off, well, GSI and for Adams County says it's 500 feet, but it's obviously over 300 feet. And it's in the front of the 7-Eleven right on the street. I'll take another picture, please. Okay, this is the child care center that is 500 feet from those pipes and that gas station. It's kind of hard to see in that first picture. I'll take another picture. I need my clicker. This is over on Bromley Lane. And you can see here that the pipes are just to the left. They're somewhat hard to see, but they're not in front of the store and they're not on Bromley. And the reason for this is in the background, you see a little white building, which is a residence. And here, once again, it is a minimum of 300 feet and almost 500 feet. And I don't know if 7-Eleven is a little bit ahead of the curve or not, but it does make sense. Do we have any more pictures? I think that one's kind of fuzzy. It just shows the pipes once again. For they were kind of placed on the side rather than, if they'd been placed on the front, like the other 2 7-Elevens, I believe they'd been too close to a residence. And so with all being said, I could go on. I don't need the pictures anymore, Linda. Thank you. I'll start with the mayor. Mayor Lofgren, if you look out your back door and you see that retention pond and you see that little strip of road that everybody rides their ATVs up and down and walk their dogs on, that's about 250 feet. That's how close, 300 feet is not very far for that. Trustee Doherty, if they were to build a gas station right across the street, you'd be probably within 100 feet. And people all the way down Berkshire on 2 would all be within 100 feet of a gas station. If you go over to Silver Peaks, down Freestone and the other road, which could possibly hold a mega Safeway with a gas station, people that live on that road could be within 100 feet of a gas station and not really having much to say. Currently, they're having trouble in Stapleton, not with just their name, but there are quite a few places where they've designated gas stations that are way too close to where the people live. And I think a lot of the people have said something about that. So really, without going over all the different chemicals again, that are infectious to life and to our children and to our own health, I personally believe that we should have a 300 to a 500 foot setback for fuel stations. And so I would ask the board to consider that.
Okay, I see Ms. Duran has her hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Trustee Strock. I just wanted to inquire a little more deeply with you on that, because when you say the setback for fueling stations, I'm not clear whether you're talking about, whether your concern is those, for lack of better terms, because I don't know what those pipes are called, but exhaust pipes or fume pipes. If that's your concern and you want to ensure that those are always within the interior of the property, or if you're talking about the property line on which that use is located always has to be at a certain setback. Because if so, then you'll never have a gas station possibly in a commercial district on the exterior of the commercial district.
I could see that. So those vents, basically, you have to take, when you fill up your vehicle or your truck, it has to allow air into those tanks for it to work. But it also has to expel air. The oil and gas industry do everything they can to recapture those fumes. The gasoline service stations actually do nothing. So it's a fair question. You could say 300 feet from those pipes, which I believe is what 7-Eleven has basically done on their own. But there are also those carcinogens and things that come from the tanks and the fueling itself. The Federal Housing Administration will not loan or insure a mortgage for a house or residence that's within 300 feet of storage tanks. They will not refinance a house. So maybe you're living there and now and you want to refinance your house, you won't be able to. So to me, that says basically that the feds believe that 300 feet is a limit from those stations. And so I don't know if you want to say from the center of those fueling stations, or if you could say from those vent pipes. Personally, I would just be happy to get something to keep our residents away from those pipes.
So I think those are really good concerns and something to discuss, but you need to legislate for what is public health, safety, and welfare issue, right? That's what makes your legislation rational. And so I'm wondering if you know of any studies, have access to any information other than what FHA will loan to, that actually addresses public health issues related to proximity to gas.
What about other
municipalities? Yeah, because those facts would be a good and proper record for us to have when in fact you do take action on this.
So I could probably come up with quite a few other municipalities and other states and stuff that have put in certain ordinances to protect their people. So maybe I could ask you, so on an oil and gas site where we're 500 feet, where are we determining that distance? From the outer edge of that, say 5-acre place, or are we going from their pipes?
We're going from the facilities, I believe, facilities to the property edge of the residential. Isn't that right, Steve? Oops,
So
you're
that would
muted.
be from their footprint.
Yeah,
So
Like from the actual, like from the tanks or any equipment on the site.
right.
I mean, I guess maybe the best thing for us to do right now is if I just check for hands real quick to see if anyone is opposed to, and I'm not trying to cut off the discussion tonight, but it sounds very much like what Maureen and Larry's back and forth here is suggesting is that there needs to be more research done by either Larry or Maureen to determine whether an ordinance of this type is even appropriate. Is there anyone on our board who's opposed to it as a general matter, such that we should say no further discussion on this? And if not, is there anyone opposed to kind of, Larry can do whatever he wants with his free time, but kind of giving Maureen direction to maybe check and see if there are any similar ordinances in other municipalities. Checking for hands opposed. I'm not seeing any hands opposed, so I think if that gives you some general direction, Maureen, to maybe see if there is anything like this out there. And certainly, Larry, you can chat with Maureen to kind of describe a little bit
Certainly.
better what
Yeah, I'd like to
what you're
help.
hoping to accomplish.
That would be
Right.
great, Larry. Why don't you give me a call tomorrow if you don't mind, or
Okay, that'd be good for me. Yeah, because there's quite a
Perfect.
few different places that do something, and I think it's just prudent to protect our citizens. So
Sure.
I'll do everything I can. Thank you.
Good comments.
Sounds good. Next item on the agenda is discussion item 9C, future remote meetings. So now that it appears our numbers are starting to go back up, I was chatting with staff and trying to decide whether it made sense to try to go back in person in August, to keep going remote, to try something hybrid. And kind of the consensus, or at least from who I heard from, was why don't we just stay remote for now and plan to stay remote through the end of 2020? If something changes in the meantime, we can always change that decision. But in order to give some continuity to staff, give some continuity to us and some continuity to the community, we just make that call for now. I was kind of looking for input, ideas, thoughts from the board before we make that decision. Is there anyone who has thoughts on that, either for it or against it, or questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Brown.
thanks, Mayor. I think that's prudent. But my question for you would be, as we move forward into home rule potentially, and I don't know what the interest level is, but you know, you're a 7-member board, that's a 9-member commission. Would it be your intention to that group, if in fact it is approved by the voters, would then also be meeting remotely?
I mean, I guess my answer to that is that wouldn't be starting until what?
November.
December, and at that point we might be reevaluating anyway.
Okay, well, right, it's just we have initial conversations with candidates, candidate forums, that kind of thing that we're hoping to hold. And so I think just looking at Linda here on Zoom saying, you know, I think we should be prepared that those will also be handled through Zoom meetings. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. I honestly don't know that. Theoretically, if we get more than 9 people, it would be too big of a group to meet in person anyway, wouldn't it? So any other thoughts, comments, concerns? Is there anyone who's opposed to staying remote? I can put on my Dave hat for 2 seconds and say he is unequivocally opposed. Anyone else have thoughts? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll operate under that basis. And we'll assume that we'll be remote through the end of 2020, or at least until the new board takes office on December 1st. Next item on the agenda is staff reports. 10A, Chief McQuay. You out there in the ether, Chief? He was on here. I saw him earlier.
He is. Tracy, do you hear us?
Oh, there he goes. Oh, you just muted yourself again. There you
Okay.
go.
The problem was that I was on my phone and I had my phone muted. I didn't realize I was muted on the screen there. Sorry. So in the same vein of the virtual meeting, so we planned this and we had a couple officers put together a really great presentation for you for the use of force presentation. We were going to talk about how we, first of all, our policy, and then also how we try to approach things and what our culture is within our department, and how, because I think all that rolls into how these things, when we're dealing with a use of force situation, how they roll out. I mean, we only control what we can control, the people we're dealing with to control a lot of that, but about the way that goes down. But I think it was important, and I don't think that really makes the same impact when you're doing it in a virtual meeting, because we're doing a slideshow and having some demonstrations from the officers. But I think I'm going to still postpone that maybe and see where we are and when we do go back to a normal meeting. But I am wide open to giving our use of force policy out to you, providing that to you. Anybody who wants it, I can include it in the next board packet if you want it. I can email it to people. But it's technical, it's a technical document, like written by lawyers in a way. So I'm wide open to giving it to you, but I'm certain that people would have questions, right? There'll be some people that have questions about what's going on. So I'm totally open to that. I'm totally happy to meet with anybody one-on-one. However that looks for anyone, I want to be wide open and transparent with any of it. So if there's any feedback on what anybody would like from that, I'd be happy to hear that.
Thoughts or comments, questions on that point from anyone?
Okay.
Yeah, not seeing any input. Yeah.
Well, good. So moving forward to my report here.
You have Miss James.
What's that?
Sorry, Jamie had put her hand up for just a second.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Jamie.
I just wanted to tell Chief, thank you for putting it together, but I agree. I think it's better face to face, and I'm totally fine with waiting right now. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. You bet. So the police reform bill is the information gathering that we've had and the data that we're required to take now. We started that. We're logging that. But we don't know how the state's going to want it when they decide that they have 3 years to start figuring out how they want it. We had 1 day to figure out how to start collecting it. So that was fun. But in 3 years, they'll tell us how they want the data that we've collected reported to them. Maybe they'll do it before, but they have that time, so I'm sure they'll take that time. So we're doing that. It was a challenge to come up with the form a little bit, and it's just getting used to a different way of approaching things. Although we were gathering a lot of that information anyway, we weren't compiling it in one place at one time. So now we're having to do that. Body cameras were in place already, so we're not affected by that. We're not really impacted by a lot of this. We're already doing a lot of it, of the things that were passed. So our business is pretty much as usual. We're doing everything we can do for COVID to try to have the personal protective equipment on when we're on calls, when we're dealing with the public. I would appreciate if anybody happens to see police officers out in the public and they're contacting people and they don't have a mask on. I would like people to let me know that because we have to. I don't care what people's political affiliation is or what their feeling is about the masks and about COVID. We have to set the example of how to do things. We can't expect ourselves to be able to enforce anything without setting the example of this. So my position has nothing to do with opinion or feelings. It has to do about what we have to do. So, and that's what I've expressed to the officers. So, and I know a few of them, think this is overblown and they don't really agree with it all, but that's their opinion, and that doesn't have a place in what we're trying to do. So I would appreciate any feedback if we see that. With the new order from the governor about masks inside public accessible places. We've had one incident on that already. Somebody was at the gas station refusing to put on a mask. They refused to serve him and told him that he had to leave. He wouldn't leave. Police got called. So we had to basically remove him, told him he had to leave and that they have a right to refuse service. And if they don't want him on the property, he has to leave. So he didn't like that. He wasn't happy with us. But, you know, all this stuff falls through the strainer right into our lap. So we get to deal with these things. So it's the way it goes. So we removed him, and that's the position we're taking on citizens that respond to businesses who then call us. It's not about whether they're wearing a mask or not for us. It's about whether the owner is telling them they're not welcome. And if they're not welcome, then they have to leave. It's a private business. They have to leave. So that's the position we're taking on it. That's the trespass issue. I think that's kind of what the governor was trying to say in his press conference. I'm not sure he relayed it really well, but I think that's what he meant, and I think that's what he was trying to say. So that's the way we're dealing with that. We have a whole different issue if the business decides not to wear masks and doesn't make people coming into their business wear masks. That's more regulatory than it is law enforcement. We're struggling with what our role is in that, other than telling them that there's a governor's order and they need to follow it. I think if it's a restaurant, maybe the Department of Health gets involved. If they have a business license, maybe we could suspend their business license, but that's all regulatory and it isn't criminal. It isn't law enforcement's role to do that. So who knows? You know, we just try to think through these things and work through them as we go. So that's been a little bit of a challenge for us, trying to figure out how to do some of these things and how to make it work. But we're making it work, so it's doing good.
Chief, can I interrupt real sec? Has that been an issue in town, or do we have any businesses that are refusing to comply?
We had an officer in one of the businesses yesterday taking a call, and nobody was wearing masks in there, including the employees. We did contact the owner, who said they will take care of it. So they may or may not have known what was going on, or just, you know, maybe they were just being just not addressing it right. But now I think they will. So hopefully that'll work. But fortunately, we don't have, in this case, fortunately, we don't have 100 businesses. So that's the only case I can think of that's fortunate for that. But fortunately, we don't right now. That's good. And then we investigated, I think you probably may have saw the press release out there. We investigated a murder-suicide over in town. That really is what it appears to be looking like right now. So it still continues to look that way. There's no real indication that it's anything other than that right now. But I know that was kind of a big deal in the community there for a minute, and it is a big deal. But it happens, and some people are reactive, and you know, they know what's happening to our little town. But those are the kind of things that happen periodically in every little town. So these kind of things can happen anywhere, anytime. So, and that's it, I think. Unless you have any other questions for me or anything, I'm wide open for it.
I did see a hand up from Trustee Westcott.
I just want to say thank you for all that you're doing. You're doing a fantastic job. I really appreciate the safety I feel in my community. I had kind of a series of questions based on some of the things that you said. You mentioned that we really didn't have to change anything other than data collection with the new reform. Is there anything else that you can think of that we're going to have to change, or is that it?
Yeah, no, I don't really see anything. I mean, one of the mandates where everybody had to have body cams. So there's several agencies, most of them larger agencies actually, that don't have body cams, and where a lot of them were really opposed to getting them, I think, for a long time. I think they'll find that they'll be happy that they get them once they have them. But we've had them for years and years. The data collection is really the main issue for us. the change in the neck restraints and the use of the carotid artery hold is not an issue for us. We were able in our policy to use the carotid artery hold if you were trained on it. There was nobody trained on it in our department. We don't train on it. But I just eliminated that now out of that policy entirely. Well, I guess not entirely. What it says is that anything, well, basically anything goes if you're fighting for your life, right? So that it's there in the sense that you can do what you need to do to serve if you're doing it to survive. It is a lethal move, basically. It's the same as pulling your weapon. So it's the same as lethal force if you use any of those types of actions. So we did a little policy change there. I can't really think of anything else how it impacts us negatively.
I appreciate hearing that. I think that says that we're doing things right, and that makes me even more confident. I guess I just have a larger question about the possibility for conflict around the mask or other public health orders. And it sounds to me like you, the last thing you said about like businesses not enforcing the mandates or whatever. I guess I'm just wondering if this is something that as a board that we really need to talk about, like what is the policy that we want the police to follow? And I don't even know if that's appropriate. So I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't know if that's necessarily a question for Chief McCoy, but maybe for us just as a regulatory religious body.
Well, I can jump into it for you a little bit as far as what our authority is in it. I don't. I mean, we deal with the criminal aspect and we deal with code enforcement, but we do have some regulatory things with the business license and the liquor license. And I don't know. I think there's some pretty specific things about how you pull a liquor license. So, and I don't think we're not wearing masks would be one of them. Generally, I would say that we would refer this to the health department if it's a restaurant or someplace like that. That go to the health department. I don't think that's going to do us much good. I think Weld County's pretty much said they're not going to do anything with this. So, yeah, I don't think we have a lot of teeth when it comes down to that issue with the businesses not following it. And I don't know if creating an ordinance or I don't know, maybe Maureen can speak to this better, but I think that we're a little bit limited in this.
So thank you, Chief. And I will let the board know that when the governor issues an executive order and issues this mandate under his emergency powers, the enforcement agency is unclear, frankly, who enforces orders either issued from the CDPHE or from the governor. What some local jurisdictions are doing is adopting local ordinances that say when the governor and or the CDPHE issues a mandate and that to fail to follow such a mandate is a violation of a local law. And that then empowers your police department, if you were so inclined, to enforce that, and your municipal court to be the location for prosecution. If you're not having big compliance issues, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze on that here. It sounds like we've only had one business so far that's been maybe a little bit resistant, and that maybe the conversation that the chief had has gotten them into line. And I guess what I would recommend is we give that a week or two and see if that brings the results that that maybe the board desires without having to take further action.
Did that answer your question, Trustee Westcott?
Yeah, I agree that I don't know that this is something necessarily that is going to become a huge issue. I think mostly what I'm concerned about is just hearing stories about how these confrontations can really escalate quickly, and making sure that we just, I don't know if we can anticipate that, but yeah, so I think that answers.
For whatever it's worth, it seems like things escalate quickly right now. Seems like confrontation escalates pretty quickly right now for a lot of different things. So I think when we can get back to normal a little bit and people aren't cooped up in their houses and they have jobs to go to. And I think there's a whole lot of factors into why that's happening right now. So hopefully we'll get back to normal pretty soon someday.
Okay. Trustee Strock?
I'm not sure where this jurisdiction was, but tonight I thought I heard of a $999 fine and up to 300 days in jail for not having a mask. All I wanted to say.
I don't know where that's at.
That ought to change your
also-
mind.
Yeah, that's true. Also, I forgot to mention, so I just wanted to bounce this off you, or I'll let you absorb this a little bit and see what your feelings are. We've been looking at different patrol cars. We're doing a hybrid Ford right now. It's been on order forever. We're going to lease it instead of purchase it to try to save money this year. But with that, we're thinking about trying to do a lease purchase with two of them and still spend significantly less this year than we would have just purchasing one outright. That'll really help our fleet out a lot. But I started reading some articles about a department in Indiana and a department in Connecticut. Both of them have been using Tesla Model 3s. They're saving about $3,500 a year on gas and maintenance. So the car itself costs about $5,000 more than the Ford hybrid that we're getting, and then the upfit will be about the same. It might cost a little bit more, but the maintenance costs and the fuel costs on a combustion engine car is way out of sight compared to the warranty that you get. And so what I think I read there was there's 400 moving parts in a gas combustion vehicle. In a Tesla, there's 40 moving parts. So in the electric engine, there's no oil, there's no combustion engine. So it runs clean, of course, but it runs without very much maintenance. There's only like 3 required maintenances in the first 100,000 miles. From what the articles I read, the one guy's had one for a year and all they had to do was change the tires. So and so you get a charger with the car, and the problem is I don't see any issues. I see no negatives from this except the optics and the idea that the police departments are driving Teslas. I think people perceive that as maybe you're wasting money or you're spending too much money. So I think if we did something like this, we'd have to really do a big campaign of hey, look at how we're saving ourselves money, right? So I just wanted to let you know that I'm looking into that, and I think it's a real feasible concept, and potentially save us a lot of headache and a lot of money in the future with maintenance and fuel. So there you go. We'd be having Teslas.
Anyone have thoughts or concerns or instant rejection of that, or is Chief good to go ahead and look into that a little bit more? Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands, so I think you're free to investigate a little bit further.
All right. There's Larry.
I was just going to say, I think it's a great idea. I'm not against gas stations. We're going to need them forever. Someday they may be biofuels. Maybe after that, they might just be for electric cars. So here we go. Thank you.
Okay. Was that it, Chief?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank
Sorry,
you for your
I took so long
update.
to-
No, you're good. Next update is from Mr. Rainey.
Right, I think the chief just wants to sneak up on people. Electric car, which is a good idea. All right, enough funny stuff. Let's get down to serious business. The wastewater plant is, running really smooth. You can see our flows are up about 120,000 gallons a day, which equates to about anywhere from 400 to 600 homes, depending on the time of year. And the effluent, is tracking right along with it. We have seen a lot more groundwater in June just because of the irrigation ditch that goes right by the treatment plant, but plant's still running good, and you can still see we're right at about 500,000 gallons a month of dewatering the sludge. So that's going very well. We've actually been improving it drastically. In fact, we found a couple other different chemicals that we use to dewater the sludge with, and we are getting about a 15% improvement at the same price. So give us a few, it's a new machine. It's kind of new to all of us, but we're tuning it in. I think we're really going to show some great savings. You can see if you read the report, you always see the wastewater plant always requires a lot more maintenance than the water system does. And it's just, it's just indicative of what we do. And as Ms. Rademacher pointed out, yeah, we're selling water like no tomorrow. If you look at the June report, we sold 10 million more gallons of water in the month of June in 2020 than we did in 2019. Now, some of that is related to growth, but the majority of it was hot and people are watering more, which is, as a revenue source, that's good. But, with everything going on, people are staying home more. You're going to have more water use. I don't necessarily think that it's going on lawns as much as it is cleaning more and people just being home more than being at work, right? I think that's probably the biggest part of it. But everything, we replaced some equipment, which kind of leads into the capital improvement matrix. We replaced a motor on one of the RO pumps, so we really don't need to replace it, which was a $15,000 item on the CIP, and we replaced the motor for $3,500. And it's running good. We've inspected it, so we're doing great there. The only other thing that we're working on in water right now, Steve and I have got out the water rate cost of service study, which I'm sure Steve will probably have a little bit to talk about. The wastewater plant, we've been very busy down there, finishing up some projects, starting some new ones. One of the things that we've been investigating at the wastewater plant, we have a budget for, they're called weir launder covers. And what those are is they cover up a part of a clarification process so we don't have algae grow, which clogs up the UV system. It creates a lot of extra maintenance. If we were looking at one that's actually submerged, or instead of being up out of the water, which has got some promise, we just got to find out, does it cost us more to install them than the normal ones? As you know, we've replaced a UV system. The SCADA system is 99% done. We just got to figure out the internet issue that we've had. And we've got the air conditioning completed. The next thing that we'll be working on, which we've got out on the street, is the wastewater master plan and rate study, as well as getting out a RFP for an architect for the admin lab building, which we will also be making space for public works for some offices. So everything's running smoothly. We've got a lot of people on site doing a lot of things. I'd like to tell Mr. Johns we appreciate him coming down, keeping the site groomed nice and spraying some weed killer in those areas. Sure keeps it's easier for us to keep the plant up looking good. And if you got any questions, just let me have them. No, I can't hear you.
Grant has a question.
Yeah, Trustee Doherty.
Yeah, I was just curious if you've seen any, I guess, differences in percentages of returns. So I know you were talking about kind of the usage has gone up, but I'm kind of curious about just based, not a total returns, but a percentage based. Because I know one of the things that I've seen both in the news, but also I've seen a couple in town is the increase in pools. So I mean, that'd be a lot of water that's being taken from this system, but not then being put back into this system that you would normally see from, washing dishes, taking showers and things like that.
Well, if you kind of look at it, I mean, it's kind of tough for us to tell based on us being involved with Brighton, right? So when you think about how much Brighton contributes to our system, they contribute 39, 40%. So if we subtract that, because that is something that we look at, we're running about 54.6 to 55% of our return flow, meaning how much water do we produce compared to how much comes back into the wastewater plant. And 54% for summer usage is about normal, okay? Because you do see a lot of pools in almost all communities. A lot of them are little kid pools where they hold 100 gallons. They're not holding a lot, but 54.6 is what we've seen June and July so far. And that's pretty normal, because why we track that is because of water rights. I mean, being able to say how much your augmentation goes back. So that is something that we use, that we don't necessarily use at the treatment plant, but the water right attorneys and the water right engineers actually do track. So
Thanks.
it's the same.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Well, okay, Trustee Strock.
At the wastewater plant on June 15th, it says the interior lines of the processing building backed up due to discharge from the filter press. You located the drains and began to clean up the building. Is that as bad as it sounds?
It does. It is. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It is. And where that came from, Trustee Strock, was when we did the upgrades, or we put the dewatering equipment in, we did the headworks. There was supposed to be a 4-inch drain that was to be installed in that building. And it ended up being overlooked, and it ended up being a 3-inch drain. So what we've done to kind of relieve that is flush that more after we're done each time, because when we dewater sludge, right, we've got clean water that goes back down that drain, but when you wash the machine out, those solids go down in that drain. There's polymer, which is very sticky, gets with it, so it clogs up. Yeah, it was not fun.
I bet it wasn't. One other question I had was about well number 6. It said you located the lines from well number 6. Now, which one, you have to forgive me, which one is well number 6?
That's the one that's over by the school that's
okay.
It's got the well 7's right next to it. It's got the really ugly fence,
right.
It's that building over there. Yeah, so it's that one over there. And we do have some issues with it. We thought we had actually flushed that line out pretty good, but we found out that, when we increase how much we want to withdraw out of number 7, or number 6, it increases the velocity in that pipe, and we see the pre-filters to the RO clog up a little sooner. So we're out for bids to do a tank cleaning. That is on our normal cycle, 5-year cycle. So we came up with a plan with the divers to clean that tank, that what we would do is we would isolate the small tank, and then we would run off of the large tank, and we would flush the well 6 into the tank. We can actually bypass the treatment plant and get a great scouring velocity and shove it into that small 250,000 gallon tank. Then the divers will be there to clean it up. We can get it out, and in that way we don't damage the RO system. I think it'll work pretty good. We're anxious to see that how well it works, but we won't do that till the divers are on site and we know we can clean it.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? Seeing none, thank you for your update, Mr. Rainey.
Thank you.
Next update is from Mr. Johns.
So I've prepared a pretty extensive list on my report as far as a lot of projects that are going on around town. So I won't dive into those a whole lot. But I do want to let the board know that I've already received contact from the engraving company, and the gentleman that is doing the design is out for a couple of days, so I probably will not get a design to you until next week. So just a quick heads up. But other than that, if you have any questions about anything that's in my report, I'm available.
Any questions for Mr. Johns? I'm seeing none. I did just want to say thank you for your thorough report, though. That's really nice to get those little snippets of everything that's going on in town.
You're welcome.
Next report is Mr. Stamey.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just add one additional information for the Public Works. We are looking at the option of extending some of the milling and overlay of County Road 37 to include an area farther south of County Road 4. So we're going to get a firm pricing for that to probably bring that to the board as well. And I would have one update. We had on our initial budget calendar, we were looking at a potential budget work session on August 11. We would like to cancel that meeting on the 11th and move that to a discussion item on the August 18th board agenda. As Mr. Ramey said, we do have our proposals out for the water and wastewater cost of service studies. We're starting to get some requests for information on those right now, which we will respond to. And then when we do, we will have a team to interview and bring that information back to the board on the status of that project, those projects. We did have a discussion today with IT and WANRAC, which is a company that does the fiber optic line that runs by Town Hall and services the schools. And so they're going to give us a quote to connect into one of their fiber lines that's in that sheet to service Town Hall. And so they're looking at some additional information, and hopefully we'll get back with us with a quote in probably a couple of weeks. But that would expand our ability to serve, will make Town Hall operating speeds faster as well. But right now, when we look at hotspots and things like that, our bandwidth is really, it's being used up already. So this would give us more options.
And that would be a CARES COVID expense, right?
That's what we're hoping would be into that funding to do that service, correct?
Any questions or comments for Steve? Trustee Jeffrey?
Thank you, Mayor. Talking about fiber optic and connecting made me think about the library for some weird reason, and I'm sure things have been stalled, but I wondered if there was any new information about that at all.
I don't know if Steve wants to talk about that, but I can give a brief update. Maureen, Steve, and I have directed our library attorney to kind of draft a memo about the current status of that. We did have a meeting. I think our last meeting on the library was like 2 days before everything went to hell. And we weren't in a good position coming out of that meeting. I shouldn't say good position. We weren't in a good place coming out of that meeting. Both High Plains and Hudson were indicating reluctance to service us. So we were at the point of trying to decide what our next steps were. After everything kind of exploded, it was pretty clear that both High Plains and Hudson were going to be in different financial circumstances than they were in March. And so we kind of had pressed the pause button with our attorney so that we didn't continue to rack up legal fees, and told him, don't do anything really on our behalf until you hear from us again. So right now, his direction is put it on hold, give us a memo about where we're at, and then this board or a future board can decide whether to pick that back up and try and advance the ball anymore. But I can tell you it was not looking like we were on a very easy path to getting a library in March. Is that fair, Maureen and Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, Trustee Strack?
Yeah, I had two for Steve, I guess. One is Southwest Weld is looking for some tip projects that are coming up, and are you kind of aware of that? And
For some what projects?
for the new tip projects coming up, and I think they're really picking on the big ones, like 52 and 7 and 66. But I didn't know if we had anything or some input. They were asking for their proposals here in the next couple of weeks. So
Okay, I will have to follow up with that.
okay, all right. Then this one's probably even more tricky. Dr. Cog has $800 million in toll credits. And I think these toll credits are a way, since everybody's, even the state is having trouble producing the funds for all the different projects, that they're going to use these toll credits. And I think they're available for use on federal projects. And I don't know if that would help us any, where we can use these toll credits rather than coming up with our cash, our matching funds. So that might be something for us to check into.
I had just one brief presentation I heard from CDOT on those, and
okay,
I thought their ability for us to use those was kind of a stretch. I didn't know if it'd be applicable for us or not, but I'll follow up.
Okay, that's kind of the way I understood it too. It seemed like it might be more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah.
But okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions or comments for Steve? And I'm seeing none. Any other staff reports tonight? Seeing none, I will move to Mayor Trustee comments, and I will start. Let's start from the center and move out. How about Trustee Stratt?
Oh boy. The only thing I have is, I know we usually have some events during the year to get the town together, and I know in the future it's going to be hard to start back up again. But I was kind of wondering if we couldn't have maybe some type of a little farmer's market or craft fair in the town hall parking lot. Maybe start off something really slow and see if it progresses from there. And maybe it would bring the people out again. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Morris.
I like Trustee Strock's idea about the farmer's market or some sort of community event. I think we should consider that and look at a whole bunch of different options that we could do. Obviously balancing it with the COVID insanity. The only thing that I wanted to mention really, just put it on our radar in case we haven't seen it, but the annual conference, the Municipal League Conference, is next month. It's a virtual one or something. Is that something that we want to do? Are we going to forego it this year? Does anyone know?
I mean, it's up to the individual. If you want to register, go ahead and let Linda know and she can get you registered. It is much cheaper. I think it's only like $100 to register for the virtual event. But if you're interested in attending, please do let Linda know and get yourself registered.
Okay. Thanks. That's all I had.
That goes for all of our board members. For Trustee Westcott, I think you're the only one too new to know about it. CML usually hosts an annual conference, and this year it got canceled for obvious reasons. And they're doing a virtual thing instead. It is really interesting. They usually have sessions on a wide variety of things, budgeting and interaction with other local entities and that kind of thing. So if you have free time during, I think it's like August 22nd through the 25th or something, if you're available and interested, you should certainly talk to Linda about getting registered. Okay, next would be Trustee Westcott.
Yeah, that's right. The middle of back to school. So
right.
Be a bit of a challenge, but I'll look into it. I just wanted to say again, thanks to everyone for the support that I've gotten in adjusting to this change in my responsibilities. I think at some point we were talking a little bit about grant money and trying to figure out maybe how to spend CARES funds. And I'm just wondering, I have some friends who are in like event industries, and they've been really hit hard because nobody's doing events. And I don't know, we're talking maybe about doing something. And I don't know. I just think that if we could find a way to reach out to businesses within in the city that are, or in the town that are you know, I don't know if that's fireworks companies or people who do catering or whatever, and some provide some relief for them in some form. I think that would be a cool thing to do. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, Trustee Jeffrey.
Couple of good ideas thrown out by my fellow trustees tonight. I like it. I'll continue to brainstorm. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Doherty.
Yeah, so I have two things. But first, I would like to just say that I really appreciate the chief's comments and perspective that he had posted or he had included in our June 16th newsletter in regards to the incident in Minneapolis. Like I said, I really appreciate his comments and his perspective on that. And I think that it was really well written. So just with everything kind of crazy going on, it's nice to see something like that. And then the other thing is, as many of you probably know, today is actually my last board meeting as trustee of Town of Lac Bowie. And my last day will actually be July 28th. With my wife working in Wheat Ridge and my work in Lakewood, if I actually ever return back to normal-ish, we've decided to relocate to the west side of Denver. But while we're looking for land to build, we're temporarily moving to Greeley. So I moved to Lac Bowie a little over 9 years ago, and I've been on the board for around 6 now. And I'm definitely privileged to have been appointed to and then twice elected to the board. It's been great to be a part of and see the evolution and changes throughout the town. I'd like to thank all of our staff members for all the hard work that they've done, as really none of what we've accomplished over the last 6+ years would have been possible without their help and their guidance through all of that. And then secondly, I'd like to thank all of my fellow board members, both past and present. It's been really enlightening to hear differing perspectives, but encouraging to see the board come together to consensus on many of the difficult decisions we've had. And I only wish other governing bodies could do the same. I really do look forward to seeing how Lac Bowie continues to grow and change in the future. And it really has been a pleasure working with our various staff members and being part of this board. So I appreciate it very much.
Okay, and I don't have a lot tonight. I don't have a lot tonight other than to say you don't often get to have a best friend on a town board with you, and it's for my wife and I, it's been a very hard couple of weeks adjusting to the idea that our good friends might be leaving town. And I think Grant will be truly missed from this board. His perspective as an engineer and the various thoughts and ideas he's brought to the board over the past several years, all the work he did to make County Road 2 happen, to make the roundabout happen. He's probably been the fiercest advocate for the roundabout over the past, 5 years before we actually even came up with the project. Your contributions to this board will be certainly missed, and that goes without saying. Kind of on that related note, we will have another vacancy that has to be filled now. As you all know, we had 2 applicants for the last vacancy. Because we only had 2, I thought it was appropriate to reach out to Mr. Kimmerly and see if he would be interested in filling Trustee Doherty's position on the board. He indicated he would be interested. So as long as the board is okay with it, it will be one of our first action items on, or one of our first items on our August 4th agenda to appoint him to that vacancy. He seems excited to jump on board, and he'll be right. First actions he'll be part of will be the budget. So fun time to be joining. Is there anyone who's opposed to putting that on the agenda for August 4th? Trustee Morris?
I'm not necessarily opposed. I just have a question. Do we need to advertise for the vacancy? When we advertised for the position Trustee Westcott filled, we advertised only for that one position. Some time has elapsed and now a second vacancy has occurred. In the interest of propriety and transparency, do we do we want to list this vacancy again? I know that would set it back a couple of weeks, but thoughts?
And I'll let Maureen kind of chime in, but I think we're actually, there's no requirement for us to ever advertise. That was just our choice last time. And kind of the thought process I had this time was if we chose to advertise, we might as well just leave it vacant because there's only, I think, 6 meetings left until the election. So if we did an advertised process, by the time we finished that and appointed someone, it would probably be like 3 meetings left, and it just wouldn't make sense to go through all the hassle at that point. But I'm certainly open to that if other board members think that's more appropriate. Thoughts, comments, questions from anyone? Trustee Jeffrey?
I feel comfortable with not advertising this go round because of the late date and the current situation of still having virtual meetings.
Okay, anyone else? Thoughts, comments? Trustee Morris, are you fine with that, or do you remain concerned and think we should still do advertisement?
I think I'm okay with it, but I think I felt it was important to be transparent and advertise the position to the town for Trustee Westcott's position, even in light of her avid interest for it. I think I feel the same. I think we should post it and advertise it, just so that we respect the process for any vacancy on the board at any time during the calendar year or the election cycle.
Well, let me put it to you this way. If that's your position, would you prefer to just hold it vacant because there's going to be a special election in November either way?
No, because we're only in July. We've got August, September, October. We still got 3.5 months to go. I think I still would advocate for following the process and respecting that, and doing things above board on everything. But that's my opinion, and I obviously respect everyone else's opinion, especially if I'm in the minority.
Did you have your hand up, Maureen?
Well, I'm just wondering if a solution to that concern, which I understand might be just a shorter advertisement period here, put it on the website, put it on the social media, and not wait for a newsletter or billing to go out. And that way you could still take action at your next board meeting, depending on how many applications you received.
I think that's a workable arrangement for me.
Okay, is everyone okay with that?
Certainly.
I assume that Mr. Kimberly will probably apply again, so.
I hope so.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands, so I think that'll be our kind of our operation here. So if you can you make that work, Linda? Is the 7 days or 10 days enough?
Yeah, I think so. I'll try to, we can try to get something quickly in the next day or two out on the website, hopefully tomorrow. And Facebook, and then just leave it out for however long. Let's see, today's the 21st. So if we leave it out to the 28th, then that still gives us the opportunity to put everything in the board packet if there were to be other applicants, kind of thing. And then that should work for the schedule for the August 4th meeting still, if that works for you guys.
Sounds good. Make it so.
Okay.
Okay. And with that, I don't have any other comments. Oh, Mr. Hahn?
Well, I'm not a trustee to make a comment, but I appreciate the opportunity. I just really wanted to say to Trustee Doherty how much I really appreciate his insight and contributions to this town. I think I've said to all of you till I'm blue in the face that the genesis over the last 6 to 8 years in the town has been remarkable. And I think you played a huge part in that. I really did appreciate your willingness to share your expertise. You had a unique and important background, and you were willing to share that, which was very, I thought, generous of you. And you always did it, frankly, I thought, with great respect for your other board members, and that came through. And I've been practicing municipal law for 30 years next year, and it's rarer than it should be. And so I so appreciate you being a good role model for that. And I personally am really going to miss you on the board. So just wanted to thank you for all your service.
Thank you, Marie.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion.
I move to adjourn.
I second that. 3 cheers for Grant. Hip hip hooray.
Hip hip hooray.
Hip, hip, hooray. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. We are adjourned at 8:32 p.m.
You'll be missed, Grant. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Thanks, Grant, for everything.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks.